Hello, everyone. Cecilia here from ISSIP. So we have a guest from Poland today, ISSIP Ambassador, Andrzej Rucinski is joining us. Hi, Andrzej. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a very kind invitation. Especially it is my pleasure. We are broadcasting primarily for the United States. I am right now in Poland and you are in New Zealand. So this is a absolutely fabulous setting, global setting. So thank you very much for having me here.
Great. I know that you're the professor at the University of North Hampshire right now, but could you introduce yourself to the ISSIP community?
I would be more than happy to do so. I'm Andrzej Rucinski, and the whole of my adult life, I lived in the United States, and I was associated with the University of New Hampshire, which is a state university. I retired several years ago, and right now I sort of have double life. I spent some time living in the States and I spent some time living in Poland. And currently I am talking to you from Poland. The life being a retired professor is wonderful. And it's not that I'm not missing my university. It's not that I'm not missing my friends. It's not that I'm not missing my students, but I can do whatever I want. So I still continue working on the research issues, which I'm going to briefly tell you what I'm up to. And that's in essence what it is. It's a very nice arrangement, being able to do whatever you want to extend our horizons as far as knowledge is concerned. Obviously, ISSIP, I have been associated with ISSIP for many, many years, thanks to Yassi, thanks to Jim, and it is really my privilege and my pleasure to serve as an ambassador for ISSIP. So originally, I'm a computer engineer. So this is my heritage, this is my origin. And over time, my research interests evolved, and I'm not going to talk about my life and I'm not going to present my CV. The current interest is evolving, going from the basic interest in engineering, computer engineering particularly, towards more broad issues which are associated with the impact of artificial intelligence. And also, I am sort of obsessed over the last decade or so with philosophy. I strongly believe that now it's time to come back to our roots. And our roots assume that the mother of all science is philosophy, coming back from Plato and Aristotle times, which is still very, very actual, and I think this is something we might consider to improve the quality of our life and make sure that our civilization is going in the right direction. So to summarize what I'm doing right now from the practical standpoint, from this classic engineering standpoint, I have been interested in the Internet of Things. And I'm working on a couple of books. Now it's another book which is going to be published this year is coming. But the last book is this one. We compiled this book, which is related to the issue of the Internet of Things. The title of the book is Dependable IoT for Human Industry. Okay. So our next book, working together with international team, wonderful, wonderful people, is dealing with global trusted dependability.
Right.
And the reason why we are dealing with this issue, I think challenges of the world require more attention from the standpoint, what does it mean to have a trusted and dependable world we can function, trying to sort of cope with global challenges.
Mhm.
So that's in essence what I am doing right now. Obviously, please ask any questions if you need to know more, but I would like to move on, and I would like to share with you some of the thoughts which I have related to service science, because we are
Yeah.
all associated with service science, and I think this is what our favorite, one of our favorite topics is and should be. As I mentioned before, service science is a great concept. It's absolutely outstanding thing which I'm in love with, and obviously I'm fascinated with service science for two basic reasons. The first one is to be able to capture and understand evolution laws of technology.
Mhm.
When essentially we came from this practicum of using software engineering to address different challenges, and based on the observations and experience coming from software engineering, Jim came up with this idea of service science, trying to capture and understand mechanisms and laws which govern the development of software per se. So that's one thing which is great, because our knowledge obviously has gained tremendously. But there's also the second aspect, not sort of business-related aspect. This is a human-related aspect,
Right.
namely that service science is looking at the essence of humanity. We are not just executors of, we are not just implementing something which we are trying to achieve some goals, but we are trying to do it with human touch. And obviously this idea of mutually convenient or useful relationships is something which is absolutely tremendous and worth pursuing. So that's why I became, so to speak, involved in service science.
Yeah, that's a
But
wonderful.
there's a,
Yeah, just one question there. Going back to the questions of your second reason for your love for service science. So you mentioned about the human touch. And then when we are talking about emerging technologies in general, whether it be artificial intelligence or blockchain or even, the cloud, the most important question for all of us is how we could, humanize those technologies to create the solutions that create value for our end users, right? From your point of view, how, what is the best approach? I know that there's no, single, solutions for this, but what, from your point of view, what would be the ideal approach to humanizing technologies for the solutions that creates value for end users?
Thank you very much. This is an excellent question, and actually, that's exactly I started becoming obsessed with philosophy. Because what happened, if you look at the evolution of technology and science, we are coming from different eras when the focus was, let's say, on materialistic approach to technology developed, or some kind of more ideological, spiritual approach to the world. If you look at the history of our civilization, well, what is quite interesting, we don't really know up to now what is this optimal solution you are looking for. In other words, maybe what we can do is to, well, obviously there are several elements, and I don't have enough time to explore all of them. So let me just get to the point. I believe that the primary focus should be on who we are as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how we create the theory of science or science of science and other paradigms and so on and so forth. It's still, it is being done by us as humans. because everything what we know is through our eyes, through our senses. So I think this idea of this concept of realization, that the world is being perceived through the eyes of us as humans, is important. So obviously the question is, are we able to sort of detach ourselves from this human touch and create different universal models of the universe? That's a question. But the model which I'm working on assumes all possibilities. And based on this model, depending on the function of the goal function, you can look for some optimal solutions. So from that standpoint, I strongly believe that we cannot anymore separate our world from the fact that we are humans. So as a result, and I'm just finishing this thought because I understand that we are under time pressure. As a result, this universe, which is around us, has three different sort of parts. One is this materialistic part, this based on the matter. This is how we are built, using atoms and particles. The second part is the spiritual part, which is represented by humans and by our cognitive capabilities and by our brains. But there's also the third part, which we realize that it does exist. This is artificial intelligence. So this balance and this migration going from one part of the universe going to the other and joining them together and so on and so forth may be the basis to create some kind of optimal solutions, which would be obviously aimed at what? At the wellness of humanity,
Right.
symbiosis with the world, with Earth, taking care of the nature, staying, being humans, and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm, in principle, that's what I'm working on right now.
Great. And then you briefly mentioned about the book that you've been working on, the dependable IoT. Could you just share us a little bit about what that means by the dependable IoT, that the conceptual meaning of it?
If I understood your question properly, you are talking about dependability, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So my heritage, again, I unfortunately I have been long enough here to have different experiences, so to speak. My specialty was fault-tolerant computing. In other words, I have been working for many, many years on computing systems which are able to diagnose themselves and fix themselves, repair themselves.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach to what computers can do. But so the classic theory from that standpoint, just let me mention two names. There's Zenis, that's one name, and another one is Preparata. But it turns out that right now what we are experiencing is we have to add also some other characteristics in this theory of fault-tolerant computing. One of them is trust, for example. So this issue of trust and how we can capture trust and how we can capture things like fidelity and how we can, can you hear, can you see me? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess.
How we can capture those features, that's the sort of roadmap which we are pursuing in trying to expand this theory of fault-tolerant computing. So our next book is going to be on the global trusted dependability.
Got it.
So I would say that one of the examples which would be innovative in this book, when you compare this book in comparison to the classic fault-tolerant computing is to look at issue of fault tolerance and dependability on a global scale.
Oh, wow.
Because typically what we have been doing, I'm working, for example, with my friends from Ukraine,
Right.
and we obviously understand the issue of Chernobyl and so on and so forth. So, and we have new experience right now, and I think we have a better understanding what we should do in terms of making the whole Earth, the whole world safer. So that's the direction what we are, where we are going. And as I said, on top of those classic characteristics of fault tolerance, we added new features such as trust and fidelity and others. So that's my answer.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And also shifting our conversation towards a services system a little bit. So I know that you shared one article with me about smart cities. And there are lots of, literatures around smart service system these days as well. And as we live in a highly complex society, with the advancement of technologies like artificial intelligence, machine-to-machine communication has become ubiquitous everywhere. And then also the human actors are within the, service system to co-create value. But what would be the best human interventions here in order to enable, M2M, machine-to-machine communications seamlessly? Because it's not always, it's always easier said than done, right? And then when we look at, say, M2M communications examples out there, it's not always perfect. So as a computer, scientist, so what do you suggest to, designers, engineers, or whoever out there to enable the seamless communication?
Well, in my life, I try to be a prophet in my life. And in many instances, I was wrong. So I have to be very careful in terms of predicting what's going to happen in the future. Yeah. I think our basic task in terms of making sure that service science is properly recognized by the world globally, we have to look at service science as core of knowledge, which has the potential of expanding into several directions. In other words, what I'm trying to do as far as service science is concerned is to understand better the domain of service science. How far service science can go, and what are relationships between different sort of views or subdomains of service science. So let me just talk about 3 examples. One example is to derive from service science sufficient practical knowledge so we can talk about service engineering. Mm. In other words, if somebody wants to practice service science, we know de facto examples of service science, for example, Mayo Clinic or Olin College and other examples where the service science is being practiced without having this theoretical umbrella of service science. But if somebody wants to practice service science, I want to design something using service science principle, I think one of the things what we can think about is to look into something which I call service engineering. In other words, I have this cookbook type of recipe. I can specify design specs. I know what to do, what kind of architecture, what kind of methods, and so on. And so that's one direction, this practical direction. The second direction is sort of opposite. I think service science has the potential of looking at grand challenges. Mm-hmm. In other words, grand challenges, it's an interesting, I have studied the grand challenges quite in depth. And as I said, service science can be a basis for theoretical understanding of grand challenges, and those issues related to grand challenges can be attacked or tackle using service science. So this is sort of an opposite direction. And the third direction, I think we need more alliances. We have outstanding alliances among US, primarily US business partners. We know all of them. This relationship with the National Science Foundation is absolutely outstanding, but we need more partners and more liaisons, so to speak. For example, I'm an engineer and a computer engineer, and there's an organization called IEEE. And IEEE is, the goal of IEEE is to use technology to improve the quality of life. This is a global organization. This is 370,000 engineers working globally, outstanding people, driving the whole civilization and so on and so forth. I think it would be a wonderful, wonderful partner for service science. So I just mentioned all these examples because I would like to conclude with my presentation with the task for ambassadors. And I can see ambassadors like myself doing at least two things, at least, because obviously there may be more or maybe whatever. The first thing, I appreciate your effort when you are trying to consolidate this group of ambassadors. And I will be more than happy to participate in this process as much as I can. I would like to know who are other ambassadors. I would like to become friends with them and potentially look for new partners and collaborators and so on. So, because it's a great potential,
Exactly,
networks and so on. And the second thing is those ambassadors, as I said, should expand and try to sort of specify this domain of service science, using, for example, those cases which I just mentioned. I think it would be a good agenda and a good start for ambassadors to work together as a team. Imagine a team of ambassadors, great people going around the globe like missionaries, bringing this idea of service science to every corner of the world, including New Zealand, I would say.
Cool.
So that's what I would like to conclude my short presentation with those thoughts.
Thank you, Andrzej, for insightful answer today. Before we close this call, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with the ISSIP community?
Well, I think the final thought, and having 1 minute of time, I think the final thought is this. I think the role of scientists and engineers and people, doctors, people involved in science, technology, is not properly recognized in the world. So I think one of the missions which we should do is to make sure that the rest of our societies, the whole population of the world, does understand that we do exist, what we are trying to do, what is our mission, and also we would be a little bit more appreciated. I think we have to. There's nothing to be ashamed of being involved in science and especially service science. That's what I would say.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andrzej.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Everyone for tuning in. If you haven't already done so, please follow us on ISSIP YouTube channel. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.